we continue our series on prayer, which is, I don't think I have to spend a bunch of time trying to inspire us that prayer is a good and valuable thing. I think we're already there. Like even atheists, like 41% of atheists in one survey I said admit to praying every once in a while. Everybody values prayer. And we would all love to pray more. We'd all love it to be a greater part of our life and all that. But the bigger issue is, well, how? And that's the point of this series, because we're talking about how to pray like Jesus, because he taught his followers how to pray, and we have that info because he wanted us to have it. This whole series is built around one passage in the New Testament in Matthew chapter 6. Ryan kicked it off last week with the first part. Today, we're gonna look at the model prayer that Jesus gives of just at a time where the disciples ask, and this is the most remarkable thing to me about this passage. Luke lets us know in his version of this story, he just gives more backstory, that the reason Jesus gives this model prayer that we're gonna look at over the next couple weeks is in response to a question his disciples ask, and that is, Jesus, will you teach us to pray like you pray? Now, here's what's remarkable about that, is that as far as we know, at least as far as recorded in the New Testament, it's the only time the disciples ask him, Lord, teach us to do something like you do it. Now think about that. All the things they could choose, because Jesus did some really cool things. I mean, they saw him walk on water multiple times. That would be awesome, right? To know how to, Lord, teach us to walk on water like you walk on water. But they didn't ask that. He healed people all the time. Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, we all know friends were praying for him that we would love to be able to heal, and it'd be great to be like, hey, I'm gonna heal you. Or this weekend, this week, you could go to the hospital and just clear it out. Clear out a whole hospital, just heal everybody. That'd be fun, right? That'd be awesome. Or Jesus could also disappear. They saw that. Because one time there was a story where these people were trying to get him and he didn't want that, and so he disappears and he walks out of the village. And that would be a great thing to know how to do, to disappear, right? Imagine being at work and you hear that your boss is kind of grumpy that day, and he or she is coming down the hallway towards your office, and you could just disappear. It'd be awesome, right? Or let's say you're a mom and you have little kids all the time around you and a husband around you and every once in a while, wouldn't it be great just to disappear? Just to get a little bit of peace, right? That'd be fun, but they don't ask that. What they ask is, Lord, teach us to pray like you pray. Because that was so remarkable to them. They had never seen anybody, never experienced anybody praying like Jesus prayed. And it was crazy new. And the good news is we have it. Because here's the other remarkable thing, is that Jesus obliges, he answers. Because they could have said, Jesus, teach us to pray like you pray. And he could have said, guys, you know what? I'm Jesus. You're never gonna be able to pray like me. It'd be like if you're playing golf and you see Tiger Woods on the range, and you go up and say, hey, Tiger, would you teach me to swing like you know how to swing a golf club? And if he saw me swing one or two times, he'd be like, yeah, no, it's never gonna happen. You can't do it. You're messed up. But Jesus didn't say that. He said, okay, great. I'd love to do that. I'll teach you how to pray like I pray, which tells me that we can do this. And if we do this, our life, I believe, will be more significant. Our life will be better. And we're gonna see that as we go through this model prayer, because that's what Jesus does. He gives a model prayer, often called the Lord's Prayer. And you've probably heard it, even if you've not been around church, maybe you've been to a wedding or something like that. And people like memorize it and say it over and over again. And a lot of times, and so you'll hear it places, pretty much always in the King James. So it's like, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And just a tip, if you're new to Christianity, if the Bible you have is King James, that's all King James, and these and thous, get another one. And it's not because it's terrible or whatever, it's 500 years old. So it's gonna be a little antiquated on the language, and the Bible's hard enough to understand without adding that drama to it. So go get a New International Version or something like that, or a New Living Translation. You'll be so much happier. But so that's the Lord's Prayer, our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name, all that. And if people do memorize it, there's no problem in memorizing it and saying it again and repeating it. That's fine, but that's not why Jesus gave it. In fact, in the passage that Ryan talked about, the passage just before he gives the model prayer, he lets us know that. It's not just about memorizing stuff and babbling stuff over and over again. That's not what prayer is. Prayer is talking to your Father. That's what Ryan talked about last week, just talking to him. So what Jesus is doing is not just saying, hey, memorize this and say this. What he's saying is, hey, when you pray something like this. It's a model prayer. It's a pattern prayer. And it is really, really helpful. We're gonna see this the next 2 weeks to have the pattern prayer for a couple reasons. One is it gives us some priorities. Like, what should we include in prayer? Because without some kind of pattern, without some kind of model like this, we'll miss things. Like, there's some things we should be praying for that we should include in our time with God that we just won't. And so that's important. But also, it keeps us on track. A pattern helps people like me who have enough ADD in me to stay focused. Because a lot of us, I think, we're like champion prayers for 30 seconds. The first 30 seconds of praying, do you ever notice that? It is so easy to focus. But after about 30 seconds, it's like, oh, a bird, right? Or, oh, my coffee's getting cold. I need to go freshen it up or whatever, right? We start praying about something and we think about something else. And after a while, we're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm praying, I forgot, and so we all do that. And so having a pattern helps keep us on track and helps us focus. And so I'm gonna read the whole prayer. In the next 2 weeks, we're gonna be talking about this. Today, we're gonna look at half of it and then the other half. And here's the prayer, this one in the New International Version. This then, Jesus said, is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. So that's the model prayer. It's divided into two halves, at least the way we're gonna do it. And so we're gonna talk about half of it. The vertical is what we're gonna talk about. So think about it like a cross, okay? If you think about a cross, it's like that, right? So you've got the vertical beam in the cross, the up and down part, and then you've got the cross beam, the horizontal part. Next week, we're gonna talk about the second half of the prayer, the horizontal part, which is about us and each other, and praying for us and praying for each other and so on. And by the way, it is an us, and it is plural, and we're gonna talk about the significance of that next week. And it's significant, so don't miss next week. But this week, we're gonna talk about the vertical, about us and God. Because here's the thing that we need to understand about prayer. I think it's the most important thing to understand about prayer, praying like Jesus. And that is that prayer isn't so much about me trying to talk God into doing my will. That's actually counterproductive. Prayer is about me on a regular basis. This is a daily prayer. He says, give us this, God, give me today daily bread. It's a daily prayer. I think it's great to pray in the morning and then have a conversation with God through the day. But it's like a daily vertical reset where I reset my soul around God, His glory, His purpose, His will. And I've been doing this for about 3 weeks now, every morning, what I'm gonna share with you. And it really has been life-changing because I've always used this sort of as a guide, but not just straight up the way Jesus gave it, the way we're gonna talk about it in this series. And I'm like, why did I take so long to just do it just like Jesus gave it? Because it has been so helpful for me. And it has elevated not just my praying, but just the way I go through my day. And I think by the end of this talk, you'll be like, yeah, I could see why it would be like that. And so because otherwise what happens in prayer, if we don't have the vertical reset, it's like us busting into God's presence, like maybe your kids do from time. They bust in and say, oh, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And you're like, hey, slow down, hello? Yeah, can we just say hello? Can you just, and it's easy to do that. Or some of you know the movie Caddyshack. How many have seen it more than twice, Caddyshack? Okay, yeah, and just give you a warning since I'm mentioning it, if you watch it, especially as a family, watch a TV version with your family because when my kids were little, I hadn't seen it in so long, I kind of forgot that there were some scenes that you really don't want, it's like, oh, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't see that. So see the edited version. But if you watch Caddyshack, you're probably already thinking of this scene when you say just asking for things. It's a scene, where Judge Smales and Spaulding, the grandson, there's the scene there where he goes to the little snack shack at the turn, and Spaulding says, I want a hamburger. No, I want a cheeseburger. I want a hot dog. I want a milkshake. I want potato chips. And then Judge Smales says, you'll get nothing and like it. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what prayer can feel like. Where we just go in, God, I want this, I want that, I want that. And then most of the time we don't even get that. So it's like God saying, you'll get nothing and like it. But that's not prayer. And we will talk about making requests and all that to God and how to, next week. But prayer is primarily about something else. It's about us orienting ourselves around God that changes everything about how we go through our day. And so we're gonna go through, he gives us 4 components, 4 statements. And I'm telling you, if you do this every day, you're gonna see by the end of this, it's like, yeah, that really would change the way I go through my day. It would elevate the way I go through my day. So let's go through the 4. The first one is about posture. He says, when you pray, start out, our Father in heaven. Ryan talked about that last week. He did a great job. If you missed it, go back and watch it or listen to it. But that is the most radical part of the prayer, our Father in heaven. Because the word he uses is a very familiar word for Father. It's the informal word for Father, not the formal one. Because that would have felt like blasphemy, like way inappropriate. 2,000 years ago, the original listeners that were listening to Jesus teach about prayer, they're like, you can't talk to God like that. Because God is a God in heaven. It's our Father in heaven. And he's worthy of respect, and he's worthy of honor, and he's worthy of reverence, and he is. And prayer was all about that leading up to Jesus. And it was very distant, it was very flowery, it was very formal. And what Jesus is saying is, no, when you pray, say, hey, Dad in heaven. Now that's like crazy if you really think about it, but that's what the kind of relationship Jesus was bringing to us. And we're gonna find out, and you find out more about that later, because after Jesus dies on the cross and raises from the dead, making it possible for us to know him, the Bible says that when we begin a relationship with God, we are adopted as his children. You become an adopted daughter, an adopted son of God. And Paul makes it clear in the New Testament that you and I are, when we begin a relationship with Jesus, we are co-heirs with Jesus. What that means is you and I aren't like second-class kids. Oh yeah, you were adopted, so you're kinda in no, that's not the way he views adoption. When he adopts, you're in, 100% in. As much as Jesus is in, you and I, as his children, are in. And therefore we have full access to God. So when we pray, that means there's lots of implications, but it means for access, I want you to picture prayer as God. Yes, he is God in heaven, who's worthy of all respect. Our God, our dad is a big deal. And he's worthy of all that. But it's like if you picture him on the throne, right, ruling the universe, it's like when you come into his presence and he sees you, he's like, oh, come here. You're my daughter. You're my son. And we get to run right up into the arms of our Father, who looks at us with delight. And even if you've messed up and all that, he's like, hey, we'll figure it out, okay? I just love you. That's what prayer is. And therefore we can just talk to him. That's why I often, at the end of a talk, will say, hey, we're just gonna talk with God. And remember, prayer is talking with our Father, is talking with our dad. And therefore you can't get it wrong. He's not up there with a buzzer going, I didn't like that, or that's not good enough, you gotta do better. He's just your dad who loves you, who wants to engage. Because he's your Father in heaven. Now, when you start out praying, and I recommend it at the beginning of the day, I've been doing it before I get out of bed, because otherwise it's easy. I've been so busy over these last few months. That's just helpful for me. Sometimes I'll get out of bed and get ready and then do it, but to start the day, just recognizing, oh yeah, God, you're my Father in heaven, and not only can I pray with you now, but you're gonna be with me through the day, and you've got me. And therefore it resets us, because it's like, you know what, today's gonna be a good day, because my Father who's protecting me and guiding my life today, He's the Father in heaven. He's the God of gods and Lord of lords and King of kings, and he's in control and he's good. It's gonna be a good day. Ain't nobody gotta cry today because ain't nobody gonna die today. Save that drama for another day. That's a song. By the way, some of you don't know it. It's just a little ADD moment. But it is gonna be a good day today because God's on the throne and he's my dad. He's got it. So that's the first part of the prayer. That's the first component. And then the second is pray. We're gonna practice this later, by the way. The second is praise. He says, hallowed be your name. Now, hallowed is not a word we use very often. In fact, it's kind of creepy because the only time we use the word hallow is what? Halloween, right? I mean, it's the only time you hear it, it's Halloween, which reminds me of a story years ago. This was my first year of being the lead pastor here. I was a pastor on staff for years before, but 20 years ago, I became the lead pastor. This was the first Halloween, and it was on a Friday night. Like we have a Friday night service, which is what we're doing right now. And it was Halloween. And why in the world did I not cancel service so that we could be home? And we do now. We don't do church the one night during the year, the one time during the year, people are actually knocking on your door in an isolated world. It's like, we need to be there and we need to give out good candy, okay? We need to be, but for whatever reason, I blew it and I didn't and so we had church on Friday night on Halloween. And our normal regular worship leader didn't want to do it because he wanted to be with his family because he was smart. And so we had a young adult kind of service thing that was happening then. And the young adult worship leader was leading. And so I said, hey, do it like you want to do it, like you do young adult stuff. And back then, young adult stuff meant candles everywhere. There were it felt like hundreds of candles. I have no idea, I didn't count. So it was totally dark, all these candles. So it already had that kind of environment. And he was a good singer, but as a young worship leader, he didn't really know how to talk, with a microphone to talk. I mean, and so he didn't know how to start out the service. He was nervous. So it was Halloween, you have all these candles, and here's how he starts the service. No joke. And he even gives like a deep voice, not his normal voice. He said, welcome this All Hallows Eve. So creepy. Right, and so, we of course had a good time making fun of him for a long time about that. Welcome this All Hallows Eve. It sounds creepy, but the word hallow isn't really creepy. The word hallow is related to the word holy. It just means, God, may your name be holy. Holy means to be set apart, it's unique. It's saying, God, you are, when I say make your name holy, by name it means his character, his personhood. God, you are above and beyond anything we can imagine. And so beginning right early in prayer is to be able to think about God, who God is, because who God is wonderful. And therefore we can trust him. And to spend some time praying in the moment, God, I just want to praise you because of who you are. And to begin just to think about who he is. God, your love for me that doesn't end, your mercy, your grace, your strength, your goodness, the fact that you're in control. Whatever it is that God brings to mind or just comes to mind, it just helps to reset our soul around who God is. And then when you say hallowed be your name, it's like make your name holy, may your name be honored. It's also a commitment and it resets our soul to say, I want today to be about you, God, and your glory. I want to glorify you today. And I want others to know how good you are because they bumped into me today. You may have heard of this person who wrote this book, Rebranding Christianity. Have you heard of that? Some of you have. And how we're really brand ambassadors for Jesus, for Christianity, right? But it's saying, okay, God, as I go through my day, I want to do it in a way where people who don't know God want to because of their interaction with me. God, I want to represent you well. And it helps me to think through my day as I'm praying that in the morning and just think, okay, what meetings am I going to be in? And God, I want to, how would I glorify you in that meeting or in that conversation or in that lunch or whatever it is? Going to school, if you go to school, whatever you do. So that's the first part. That's the second part rather, praise. And then next is purpose, next component. He says, your kingdom come. So kingdom is a word like hallowed. We don't use very much. We're a democracy. But Jesus talked about his kingdom and the kingdom of God all the time. And there's a reason for that. Because our world, our universe is a kingdom. And there is a king. and that's God. He's King of Kings, Lord of Lords, over, right? But you and I live in a broken, messed up world because we're in a rebellion. And the reason our world is so messed up and so many bad things happen and we have such a hard time getting along, and we live in an upside down world. It wasn't supposed to be this way, but mankind chose sin and the world's messed up. One day, Jesus will return and he'll make the world the way it should be again. And he'll establish his rule in this universe, and there won't be any rebellion. Everything will be the way it should be. It'll be like, that's awesome. In the meantime, though, when Jesus came, he came to do two big things. One is to reconcile people to himself, to make it possible for us to know God and for our lives to be transformed, and to restore to this world, to begin the process of restoring his rule and his reign, his kingdom on this earth, to turn the upside down world right side up, to begin to restore and redeem and make things different and make things better, and to move where there's injustice, to bring justice, where there's poverty, to bring change, to bring, where there's discouragement, all that, right? To bring where there's darkness, light. And God is at work through you and me, who are his followers, doing just that. And so when we say your kingdom come, it's saying, God, I don't want today to be about my kingdom. I'm not asking you to grow my kingdom, my empire. I want to grow yours. And so I'm committing to your mission today. I want to join you in what you're doing in the world today. God, use me today to maybe help people who don't know you come to know you. As I tell my story, as I invite them to places like this, as I engage people. And God, when I'm at school and it's kind of messed up, help me make it not so messed up. When people are being picked on, let me join you and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do that. Or when you go to work, right? And the work environment is not what it could be. Well, you're there to help make it what it could be. And to make it a place of flourishing, and to make it a place of encouragement, and right, everywhere we go as restorers and redeemers and reconcilers. And it's really cool when you pray this, because then when you go through your day, you're just looking for the adventure of mission. You're saying, God, I know you're at work. Everywhere I go today, I know you're gonna be at work. Like and there's people you love and all that. And so as I go into a meeting, as I go into a class, as I go into a break, as I go into school, as I go into a lunch, as I go into wherever, in my family, my neighborhood, my golf club, wherever I go, God, I know you're gonna be there, and I wanna join you in building your kingdom and bringing reconciliation and encouragement and light and all of that. And then it just becomes an adventure of saying, all right, here we go. What do you want me to do? So you can see how important of a reset that is. It's not about me, my kingdom, it's about God, it's about you and your kingdom. And then submission. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Your will be done. Now, when the Bible talks about his will, there's several ways that's used. One is his prescriptive will, meaning stuff we obey. God says, we have it right here. This is a guide to human flourishing. This is God being gracious enough to give us wisdom, a better way than we will go on our own. And that's the first part. So let's talk about that a little bit. So to begin the day saying, God, I don't want to just do what I want to do today, because if all I do is what I want to do, it is not going to end well. Because my heart is deceitful. I'm not wise. I'm wise enough for that. God, I want to bend to your will. God, today, as I go through my day, I want to do what you want, and therefore help me obey you. Not just to do me, but to do you and to obey you. Which again is a very different way to live. And it helps me as I'm praying to think about my day and think about, what am I gonna do? And I'm gonna be doing this, I'm gonna be doing this. And what would it look like to obey God in that? And I'm like, so let's say you're thinking about work and there's gonna be maybe a sales conversation you're gonna have with somebody. And there's a part of you, right, that's gonna wanna inflate things just a little bit. But what would it look like saying, no, I'm gonna be honest. Or there's a time where you're gonna be able to get one over on somebody or to get ahead by pushing somebody down. You're like, no, I'm not gonna do that. That's not what God wants. It's always the right thing to do. Let me say it again. The right thing to do is always what? The right thing to do. Let's say it. The right thing to do is always the right thing to do. And to say, God, help me go through my day with that in mind. No matter what the consequences are, I'm not gonna manipulate anything. I'm just gonna do what I believe you want me to do, because the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. That's submission to his will. And then that's prescriptive will. But then there's his sovereign will that the Bible talks about too. Sovereign is just a big churchy word that means in control. So it's like, it's realizing, okay, God, this is a messed up world and things happen that you don't like either because the world's messed up. But you still allow, you don't cause everything, bad thing to happen, but you do allow things to happen to come into my life, and you promise to redeem them and use them, even the difficult things. And so today, God, whatever happens, I'm gonna take us from you. And I'm good, bad, or ugly, and I'm gonna rejoice when it's good, and when it's bad, I'm gonna say, okay, God, you're up to something today, because it's your will, you're in control, and I need to know your strength, I need to know your goodness, I need to know your redemption, I need you to help me to get through what I'm getting through and actually grow through what I'm going through. Which is a totally different perspective than we'll have otherwise, because we'll get upset and all, but say, no. Martin Luther, about as old as the King James Version ago, when he was talking about this, which is cool that we have it. In one of his books, he does a commentary about Matthew. And in that, he talks about the Lord's Prayer that we're in. And when he gets to this, here's how he prayed this part of prayer. He said, grant us peace to bear willingly all sorts of sickness, poverty, disgrace, suffering, and adversity, and to recognize that in this, your divine will is crucifying our will. It's saying, God, even things I don't like today, I'm gonna take it as from you, knowing that you've got a bigger purpose and you love me enough to allow me to go through this. So you put all that together, right? In fact, we are. And I want you to imagine like doing this every day. And I'm gonna ask you to do it every day for this series. To maybe before you get out of bed, or if not that, at least early on in the day, to go through these 4 components of the vertical thing. Next week, we'll talk about 3 horizontal things. But imagine how your day would be different if you actually did this and reset. Like this is a reset of perspective and a reset of focus. And to start, our Father in heaven, the posture. God, you're my Father and you love me and you're with me today. And that means not only can I trust you? Today's gonna be a good day no matter what happens, but it also means this, it's such a good reset to know that God, you're my Father and you love me, and no matter who I interact with and what they think of me today or what they say about me today, doesn't matter, because my value and my worth is based on you as my Father and your love for me, and there's nobody that can change it. And so God, help me live in the light of your love and your pleasure in me today. If that's all we did, that'd be a powerful reset. But that's not all, right? And then praise, hallowed be your name. To take some time and reflect on who God is and his goodness and his power and his mercy, and which then realizes, oh, wait a minute, I'm not on my own. And the one who's with me always is way above and beyond anything I can imagine. And then it's also a commitment to saying, God, I want to glorify you today. God, as I go through my day, help me not be about me, but about you, your glory, and your purposes, which is the next part, right? Purpose, your kingdom come. That daily reset of God, I want to live for your mission today. I want to further your mission today. I want people to come to know you today. I want to lift people up today. I want to lift my whole environment up today, wherever I go. God, you use me in your work in the world today. And then submission, your will be done. God, I don't want to just live the way I would live without you. I want to submit to what you say, even if I don't like it, even if I don't understand it. I'm going to submit today. God, help me do that. Help me to do the right thing, because it's always the right thing to do. And then God, help me trust that whatever comes by the hand, through the filter of your good and sovereign will. And you've got a purpose, you're working it out, and help me find joy even in the pain and difficulty, Not in the difficulty itself, but what you can do through it. Help me cling to you. Help me, God, your will be done today. Again, that's what, and when I said this has been like life-changing for me, I mean, can't you see why? I mean, if you have a vertical reset every day like that, as you go through, and then you just remind yourself through the day, and you have an ongoing conversation with God through the day, it changes everything. And so I want us to practice this. And so that's why earlier Peter talked about the app. And so get out your phone if you have the app, the Chase Oaks app, because if you get on the app, this is gonna be helpful all through this week and next week, you'll see that vertical prayer guide. And it's a vertical reset I'm talking about. So if you get the app out and you have it, punch the vertical prayer guide, and it'll have these 4 prayer components of vertical prayer, right? And so it'll have posture and praise and purpose and submission. And this week, every morning, just take a little bit of time to go through that. And we're gonna practice it now. So I'm gonna invite us all to just bow our heads together because I'm gonna guide you and me in prayer. And before I even do that, I still stay in a prayer posture. For some of you, we talked about how God wants to adopt you to be his child. Well, the adoption paper is already signed. Everything is available, like it's all there. When Jesus died on the cross, he made it possible for us to be forgiven, to be reconciled. Everything he offers is a gift. We just have to agree to come into the family. He just says, I love you. I want you to be my daughter. I want you to be my son. Would you come? Would you say yes? Because I have so much for you. Would you say yes? And for some of you, this is an opportunity to say yes, maybe for the first time, to begin a relationship with God. And you think, well, it's too easy. It's just, that's his grace. That's the way he made it. And as we have a relationship with God, he never kicks you out of the family, by the way. Then let's, as his children, for those of us who've taken that step as his sons and daughters, let's spend time with him now. And maybe let's start with posture, our Father in heaven. And right now, just reflect on that with God. Just say, God, you're my dad in heaven. And as you pray, I want you to picture the throne room of God. God on his throne. He's the God of heaven, powerful, holy. But when he sees you come in, see his face light up with joy. And to say, oh, my daughter, my son, I can't wait to spend time with you. And then praise. Just reflect a little bit on God and his uniqueness. And whatever comes to mind, and maybe, I don't know what it is, but just say, God, I want to thank you for who you are because you are amazing. And I need to be reminded of that because I need you. And so maybe it's God's goodness, maybe it's his mercy, maybe it's his grace, maybe it's his love that doesn't quit, maybe it's his justice. I don't know what you need to focus on, but let me encourage you to do that. And then just say, God, for the rest of today and for this week, would you help me to live in a way that your name will be praised? That people will actually want to know more about you because of me. Which gets us to purpose. God, your kingdom come. God, would you help me live the rest of today and this week for your purpose, to build your kingdom, not my kingdom, but your kingdom. And God, use me. God, it's really about joining you and what you're doing in the world. And so God, would you help me to be sensitive to that, to be aware of that, what you're calling, whatever step you're calling me to take. God, would you give me the courage this week to take those steps and to be part of your mission. And then submission, your will be done. God, maybe pray something like this to God. God, I submit to your better way. And there may be some areas of your life that are just way out of whack because you're just doing what everybody does, and that is what you want to do. But you'd say, God, would you help me get aligned? Would you help me get on the path of your better way? Thank you for your patience and grace in that, but would you help me get on the path of your better way? God, as I go through this week, God, would you help me just to do what you've called me to do and to take whatever happens as from you. And then whether it's disgrace or suffering or loss or adversity or poverty or sickness or whatever, just to find your purpose even in those things, your redemption even in those things. And on behalf of all of us, I'll say this. Father, thank you that I can even say that, because I don't deserve that. But you love to give. It's grace. You love to give what we don't deserve. You delight in it. And you made it possible for us to have a relationship with you where when we come into your presence, we can say, Dad, I need you. I want to spend time with you. God, would you help us to pray like Jesus prayed and to begin to just regularly reset every day, to do a vertical reset in a way that where our life is not just so small and tiny where we're living for us, but we're living for you, for your glory, for your purposes, and we're following your better way, your will. In Jesus' name, amen.